Je voudrais du soleil vert, des dentelles et des théâtres, des photos de bord de mer, dans mon jardin d'hiver. Je voudrais de la lumière, comme en Nouvelle-Angleterre. Je veux changer d'atmosphère, dans mon jardin d'hiver. Ma fleur sous la pluie de novembre, tes mains qui courent, je n'en peux plus de t'attendre. Les années passent, qu'il est loin, là je tombe. Nul ne peut nous entendre. Je voudrais du Fred Astaire, revoir un latte.
I just wonder, because I think any doctor that understands the impact of COVID on the mental health of patients, especially while they still have COVID, which we could suspect likely that the president does still have COVID. He's probably still shedding. It's probably still having an impact on him. You combine that with the drugs that he's taken, with the steroids that he's on. Anybody that has been on steroids, strong steroids, for health reasons, understand that it does impact the way you think. It impacts the way you respond. I don't expect any Republican on the Hill to be truthful to you on the record about their concerns about the president's stability and at least a temporary transfer of power to Mike Pence until the president's off these steroids, until the president recovers fully from COVID. But have you heard any discussion from Republican staffers, off the record from Republican legislators, from any Republicans in Washington, D.C., that they are at least concerned about a president acting irrationally with the nuclear codes? Not that, let me restate that the president who has the nuclear codes, that they are concerned about a president in this mental state being able to run the country when he likely would not be allowed to run any company in America in his current state.
Well, I don't think I have to speculate, Joe. The New York Times has reported that there are White House officials who are concerned about the president's current mental status because of the drugs that he's taken. We have been documenting very carefully, even without the steroids, how this president has governed over the course of the last several years, and that has obviously raised many concerns. But to your point, I think the level of alarm is pretty high right now among the people that I'm talking to privately. And you're right, we're not going to see a flood of on-the-record comments expressing concern about the president's health, but there is a sense that everyone is on board a sinking ship right now, and there's no good way to deal with it. And it's impossible for them to say in public any of the things that you just outlined, to express concerns about the president's state of being, to talk about the drugs that he is on, whether that's having an impact on how he's governing, partly because their own political futures are tied to him. And raising those questions would raise questions about themselves and their own ability to actually govern well. But it's fair to say that there is a deep recognition that we have not been in a situation like this before, and that there are potentially very serious questions, especially, I would say, with the Joint Chiefs quarantining. That adds a layer of concern to this that is particularly problematic, Joe.
Absolutely. And, some might argue that the ship started taking on water debate night. And the question remains whether or not the president knew he had coronavirus debate night.
Jake Sherman, I'll ask you the same question as we go to break that I asked Casey. What concerns are you picking up? Again, because it's obviously Republicans are just as concerned about the safety and well-being of their children and their country and the economy as everyone else. And if the president is impacted by COVID, as studies would show, it's more than likely he is. If the president is impacted negatively by these steroids and this treatment that he's on, which science and medicine and studies would show it is more likely than not that he is, then are you hearing any Republicans sounding the sort of alarms that others are sounding?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, twofold. Number one, it's difficult for them to do it publicly because their political fortune, they believe in some of these very red districts. I mean, Joe, think about your old district. Probably will go for Donald Trump 60-40, if not bigger than that. A lot of Republicans represent these districts in which the president is still inordinately popular, and so they don't have any incentive to speak out against them. But think about it this way. I mean, no one is looking to lie across train tracks for the president right now. You're seeing that in Senate races. You saw Martha McSally last night in an Arizona Senate debate refuse to kind of address her support for the president, say whether she's proud of her support for the president. There's definitely a concern about the decisions he's making, and there has been for some time. And I think some of the behavior you're seeing now is acutely due to the fact that there is nobody really in the White House. And not that it's that much different than previous weeks or months, but there's no one even to try to push back. And that's the particularly dangerous part for the president, why he's kind of operating as a lone ranger here, I would say. And I think we're going to see that in the days and weeks ahead as the president kind of, if he stays healthy, and we hope he does, kind of operates from his gut and from his political heart, which is something that his advisors have continually warned him against.
Joe, this move was so politically irrational when he made it yesterday in that tweet to go out and take ownership of the fact that $2 trillion of government money would not be going out to people, to voters, 4 weeks ahead of Election Day, that I started asking around Capitol Hill. It turns out, as ever, there is no four-dimensional chess here at work. It was just a move he made, something he threw into the atmosphere without thinking about it. It was summarized by one congressman who told me about the president. He feels insecure, so he needs to exert his power to feel good. That just doesn't work here. It's not how we operate. So the president puts out that tweet that can't be taken back now and sends a signal to voters, again, less than a month ahead of Election Day. I'm the guy who cut off negotiations. I'm the guy who ensured that perhaps your small business will fail or that you won't get that check you were hoping for.
Yeah. We've talked about for some time how this president has, for whatever reason, consistently put himself on the 30% side of issues that are 70-30 issues. And you could go down the list in 2020, but he's done it time and again. I would guess this is likely a 90-10 issue, that if the Fed chairman and the markets are saying that we desperately need some stimulus going into the new year because 2021 is going to be devastating, for a president to unilaterally kill the bill and then take credit for it is like something I've never seen in politics. Usually what would happen is, cynically, presidents would kill a bill, but then figure out a way to subtly blame the other side. And they would do that to try to protect people in their own party, to try to protect the Martha McSallys, the Cory Gardners, the Susan Collins, the Steve Daines. Did not even do that. So in Montana, people in Montana now know that Steve Daines supports a president that has killed any stimulus checks to help the people of Montana through their crises.
The hardest time they've seen.
In years, and spread that to Maine. Same thing happening. Susan Collins, president that she has supported time and time again, has cut off checks that could help the hardworking people of Maine, and do that around the country. It's just absolutely illogical, and suggests that the president is right now not only a detriment to his party, but also a danger in fact, if in fact he is impacted by the drugs he's on, and the fact that he probably still has COVID, that he's even more unstable and unmoored than he is in the best of circumstances.
It is Wednesday, the 7th of October of 2020, and you are in West Coast Cookbook and Speakeasy. I am your chef de cuisine, Justice Putnam. Gunner, the English Bulldog, is our snoozing sous chef, and our daily special is Smothered Benedict Wednesdays. Will no one rid us of these meddlesome priests? While actually having a lovely egg dish with a velvety hollandaise sauce. Oh, so lovely. How was your day after yesterday's show, huh? Wow. You know, you don't want to have the leader of the free world going on roid rages. You really don't. One tweet in a roid rage, and he crashed the market. It was such a precipitous drop. I know some people said it was like 1.4% on the Dow. That's like what happens on a daily thing. Yeah, but not after one tweet. And that drop across the market in each of the markets, NASDAQ, S&P 500, the Dow, each of those recorded the single most precipitous drop in the history of the sessions of a session. The largest drop in one session. Boom! So, yeah, wish that one away. No wonder he had to change his mind. Jeez. I mean, everything's about the market, isn't it? Everything. Okay, so maybe we'll be righting this ship, we hope. It seems that in spite of all of the turmoil that this virus has caused the White House, they're busy little soldier ants, aren't they? Continuing with their voter suppression efforts by even suing little, like, piddly county officials for not towing the line of the Trump needs and wants. Come on. All right. It goes along, well, hand in hand with the story we had yesterday about the top guy reporter at the bureau chief at Voice of America, because he's not a Trump loyalist. That's their argument. We have to get rid of this guy from the Voice of America because he's not a Trump toady. All right. Just don't call it fascism. No. Yes, that's exactly what we're going to call it. And in disaster capitalism, if the leader of the free world is mentally incapacitated, meaning that he's probably still going to be going on, doing the stuff that he's doing, you might as well ride that train and use that disaster to capitalize on the things that you really want to push through, like a lifetime appointment of a super spreader. I guess, I mean, maybe she could be. Now, I've heard it argued that, you know, she has a robust immune system and she's not shedding. Now, I've heard that. But I've also heard from other virologists that indeed that's what can happen. And they're still figuring out what the capacity of this bug is. And it is a robust bug. Some people might say we had it coming, but it doesn't make me feel better knowing that. Okay? Because we could have done better. Do we do worse in the face of it? That is the question, huh? Well, I guess this is where it turns out whether we're mice or men, and I might say rats or men. Yeah. Maybe rats have a much more humane social interaction than we do. Maybe. Okay, I will also argue that just because we might be scraped from the face of the earth doesn't mean that, you know, the earth ends. Okay, Earth's going to go on. Probably even past the time that the sun turns into a red giant. I mean, who says that we're just going to get devoured by solar plasma? Gravitational opposing forces might push us further out. I don't know. Maybe we might go to one of the gas giants, get pushed out there by one of the gas giants, and start circling that, and it gets charged as a sun. That's a science fiction story that some people have, pondered. Haven't you? Why do they call them gas giants? To me, they're just suns that haven't made it to be suns yet. Because of, the immensity and time of the universe. Well, the immensity and time of the universe doesn't mean diddly when we're living in 1 nanosecond of it and suffering the repercussions because of, idiots being put in charge. I don't know if they were actually put in charge. Yeah, they were installed, but there were some that worked very hard to make sure that their idiocy prevailed in the midst of all of this. All right. The immensity and time of the universe usually balances it all out. And what is that balance? I don't know. We haven't lived long enough to know what it is. We can only speculate. And speculation is, wow. They, meaning the Trump campaign and the GOP in general, are really on, kamikaze mission? It sounds like a kamikaze mission. Is this going to be the 11th or will it be the 12th commandment? Really, technically, the 11th commandment of the GOP came during Reagan, and that was speak no ill of another Republican. Is the 12th commandment now, if you make one of your fellow Republicans ill, it's okay because it's for the cause to try to make the Democrats ill with this virus and kill them. We're not going to beat these guys at the polls. Look at the poll numbers. We're not going to be able to beat them in the ballot. So we might as well kill them with a virus. Is that why Pence is fighting so hard not to have plexiglass? Actually, when you look at the that stage, I don't know. I don't know if I'd want to be, even with plexiglass, anywhere within spitting distance of this guy. Any of the Trump campaign. Don't get within spitting distance, literally. And that's spitting distance for some of us is much more than 6 feet. Much more than 11 even. Some of us, I don't know. Maybe I'm misreading it. Actually, when these droplets become even smaller, microscopic type droplets, aerosolized, they travel much further in a room, and you can fill it up. You can fill it up with your spit. And others, too. Others will fill up the room, too, and pretty soon you're in a soup. If you're outside, maybe it would dilute a lot better, you would hope. For instance, the Rose Garden, they call that the super spreading event. It was actually the inside soirees where really the virus could do its work. Outside, it gets diluted a lot more, so the possibility is considerably less, is all I'm trying to say. Is that if Trump was a super spreader from the podium, that wouldn't necessarily mean he was able to, get those people in the first 3 rows. On the other hand, since so many of those people were in these soirees, would they only be, I don't know, maybe the ones who were in the soiree were the only ones in the first 3 rows, and all the others that were behind that were not in the soiree. What was the prevailing breeze? I would hate to have been sat downwind of wherever they are, even outside. Well, that's how else would you be downwind? Technically. So much to think about. So much to consider. I don't know. Maybe we will all be outfitted with Hermes fashion bioterror suits. Would that be nice? We could have like runway model shows with these bioterror suits, and they could be really sexy too. Of course, then you couldn't make your models rail thin because the biosuits would just fall off of them no matter how thin they would try to make the biosuit fit. That's how I see it happening. But I'm I'm not a seamstress. Seamster? Wow, I guess we're going to have to figure out the non-gender specific variation on that word, huh? Okay, nonetheless, I'm not sewing those biosuits together. I would think that they would just fall off the rail-thin anorexic models that they have tended to want all these many years. Well, we could go on about the inequities of fashion and everything else, but we have enough to report on just what we've curated for today. So let's get into it. And of course, at the top, yes, that was Morning Joe again and his crew reporting on how GOP officials and White House officials have both expressed private concern. You would think it would be much more public than private, but they I don't know. This non-disclosure agreement sounds a little bit more involved in a cultic sort of way than what we all suspected to be. Anyway, Trump's roid rage on flipping on the stimulus bill is not really something that you want to have happen with the leader of the free world. You really don't. On the rest of the menu, Fauci says the White House COVID-19 infections could have been prevented. Well, I guess he's going to get fired now. Homeland Security stepped up warnings about foreign threats to U.S. election security with Russian interference in particular. Now, look it. If you're going to take disaster capitalism to the nth degree, now's the time to start telling people the truth, because the leader of the free world in a roid rage might miss this one. And so far he has. So far. Let's see if he has missed this next one, too, because of his altered states. Because in a rebuke to Trump, the FDA safety guidelines will push any COVID-19 vaccine authorization past the election. But of course, Trump has heard a little bit about this, and he said, I'm just going to bypass it. And he thinks the rest of America is just going to take it? Okay, well, he is in an altered state after all. And that was even before he was on the roids. After the break, we move to the chef's table, where Greek officials are set to deploy about 2,000 police officers around Athens as the leadership of the extreme right-wing group Golden Dawn, actually I call them neo-Nazis, Golden Dawn, well, the leadership of that group face a landmark criminal trial verdict, and we're going to have to check what that verdict is because it's coming in as we speak. And the global chemical watchdog group OPCW, and we'll tell you what that is later, has definitively confirmed that Russian opposition leader Alexei Navalny was the victim of an attack with a Soviet-era nerve agent. All that and more on West Coast Cookbook and Speakeasy. Bon appetit. At netrootsradio.com. To the rightish of the page is our chat room link, monitored by Kelly Lincoln, and Kelly does so much more than that, but we thank Kelly for everything that she does. And if you would then take a look to the leftish of the page from the chat room link at the bottom of our homepage, that happens to be at netrootsradio.com, you will then notice our Patreon page. Did you know that Howard Stern is set to pen a deal worth more than $120 million a year? $120 million! We do that for a lot less. Lots. Way lots. Jeez. Do you think Howard Stern's pulling any money out of his pocket to make that concern? No. Of course not. But we do. And we're able to do it because you help us do it. And that's how the founders originally intended. so many years ago. Because if you could afford to purchase an espresso-type coffee drink, even in these perilous times, and if you could send those funds instead to us once a month, you help us mitigate the great disaster capitalism of, gouging during a pandemic. Everybody's prone to it, apparently. Bills keep going up. Oh, my. And they do. And so we do thank those who have been so generous, even before the pandemic, because we have been doing this for a considerable time. And they have been doing this, and their generosity has allowed us to fulfill our civic duty of resistance radio. And if you feel so compelled to help us, because, look, Howard Stern's getting $120 million. What does he do? I know he does a lot. Whatever that is. Anyway, he's a big personality, and we want to find and elect more and better Democrats. Okay? We really want to have equal protection and due process under law. Or is it due process and equal protection under law? We want that. Okay? And that's why we do what we do. We're not doing it for $120 million. There's something much more important going on in the world, and we really, all kidding aside, thank you for your generosity to those of you who have been helping us achieve that goal. And we want to thank you, sort of like, a Minority Report, we're going to pre-thank you to those of you whose generosity will come in the future. Thank you. If you would like to follow Netroots Radio, it is so simple because Tom set it up and he takes care of it, and you can find Netroots Radio on Twitter at Netroots Radio. How simple is that? You can follow me on Twitter, yes, at Justice Putnam. That's man spelled backwards, okay? And it's all one word. And that's where I post the show notes and links diary that I post on Daily Codes about 10 minutes before showtime, and then get that linked up, hopefully within that 10-minute window. I really try. Sometimes I have to do it during the opening part of the show when we're have the recorded thing going on. Yeah. So you can also follow the show on Twitter at Cookbook West and pick up podcasts by way of Spreaker, Stitcher, TuneIn, iHeart, YouTube, iTunes, etc., 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 etc. My diminished capacity is not the result of any roids or anything else untoward. Okay? I don't know. What is it? Early morning, not enough coffee? Well, I guess then maybe there is a substance deficit here. Man. It's Wednesday morning. Wednesday mornings could be like Monday mornings now. Because what are the weekends? The weekends aren't like what they used to be. Not. I mean, there's all sorts of things that aren't what they used to be. The Joint Chiefs of Staff have never been quarantined ever, even during the 1918 pandemic. Even then. Okay, let's dive into this first offering here with Fauci, because I got to tell you another thing. Whatever gets pushed through by the FDA, or through the FDA, either by Trump or some accelerated means that the FDA says they're still going to follow some sort of safety measures. I'm sorry. The fastest vaccine ever developed was not in like a few months, all right? Not even in a couple of years. So let's be clear here, all right? We might as well dig in for the long haul. What's wrong with us? We're Americans. Well, apparently some of us take it more seriously than others. And that's how it is. This first offering here in the Bistro Cafe, I just want to say, when Fauci says the vaccine's okay, that's when I'll consider taking that one. Anonymous worker bees at Reuters bring us this offering. Top U.S. infectious diseases expert, Dr. Anthony Fauci, whose advocacy of public health guidelines to fight the coronavirus has conflicted with Trump's downplaying of the pandemic, said yesterday, Tuesday, the recent rash of infections at the White House could have been prevented. Several close aides to Trump and senior Republican politicians, several. It's getting into being dozens now. Let's Come on, several? Have tested positive for the coronavirus since the Republican president, and that's the only time we're going to use that P word with him, all right? Announced on Friday that he and First Lady Melania Trump had contracted the virus. You know, you really got to clean the pole. I hear that the stainless on the pole actually holds the virus much longer. Just saying. Yeah, I think she does some pole dancing, even when Donnie's not around. I wonder who is. Take a look at what happened this week at the White House, Fauci said in an interview with American University's Kennedy Political Union when asked what advice he had about how people could discuss preventative actions with relatives who believe the pandemic was a hoax. That is a reality right there. And every day that goes by, more people are popping up that are infected. It's not a hoax. It's an unfortunate situation when you see something like that because that could have been prevented. Well, how many times have we told the Republicans, the community at large, you know, if you keep doing that, you're going to set that house on fire. And they just look at you and say you're a stupid hippie, and they start trying to kick you, and then you kick back and you remind them, look, I'm not a hippie, I'm a punk, and punks kick back. And while you're like doing that, getting that repartee back and forth, the next thing you know, the house is on fire. And everybody points at you and says, what are you doing? Help us put the fire out. You stupid liberal, you just stand there doing nothing. How many times has that happened? Mark Hosendahl of Reuters brings us this next offering here in the Bistro Cafe of West Coast Cookbook and Speakeasy, Smothered Benedict Wednesdays. You know, it's interesting because this is DHS stepping up warnings about 2020 U.S. election interference, specifically about Russians. And then I just had a little blurb come up on the screen about, with cell phones in hand, the army of Trump are going to show up at your election place and intimidate people out of voting, apparently. Yeah, okay. Well, maybe DHS should look at that, too. The U.S. Department of Homeland Security stepped up warnings about foreign threats to U.S. election security, affirming other agencies' concerns regarding Russian interference in particular. In a 26-page Homeland Threat Assessment, DHS said that Russia is the likely primary covert influence actor and purveyor of disinformation and misinformation within the homeland. Really, I would almost say that Trump would be right up there with that. Or do they think that Trump is all part of that Russian influence campaign already and is not separate, so you don't really count them as separate? Could be. The department said it assessed that Moscow's primary objective is to increase its global standing and influence by weakening America, domestically and abroad, through efforts to sow discord, distract, shape public sentiment, and undermine trust in the Western democratic institutions and processes like the courts, equal protection, and due process under law. DHS paper echoed an August assessment by U.S. counterintelligence chief William Evanina regarding Russia's determination to undermine Democratic presidential candidate Joe Biden. Russia uses divisive measures to disrupt the electoral process, including denigrating former Vice President Biden and what it sees as an anti-Russia establishment, as part of a broader effort to divide and destabilize America. Well, it's not so much an anti-Russia establishment. We just don't like mob bosses running mob governments. Okay? We actually love the Russian people that probably aren't sycophants to this idiot. Well, he's not really an idiot, but I like to use a pejorative anyway. Come on. DH's new paper also warned of possible U.S. election interference by China and Iran because they have to. They got to get it past this steroidal rampaging, I don't know, idiot. The paper said that Chinese and Iranian efforts to spread misinformation about the COVID-19 virus and noted Chinese distribution of fraudulent virus tests, kits, and protective gear. Oh, my gosh. In a video posted on YouTube, meanwhile, counterintelligence chief Evanina, FBI Director Christopher Wray, Chris Krebs, Director of Cybersecurity and Infrastructure Security Agency, and National Security Agency Director General Paul Nakasone confirmed their agencies were on high alert for election interference. Our collective posture is to neutralize and expose these activities is unprecedented, robust, and unwavering, Evanina said. And Manas Mishra of Reuters bring us this final offering here in the Bistro Cafe of West Coast Cookbook and Speakeasy. The U.S. Food and Drug Administration told coronavirus vaccine developers it wants at least 2 months of safety data before authorizing emergency use, a requirement that would likely push any U.S. vaccine availability past the November presidential election. A senior administration official confirmed the White House had approved the plan, which undercuts Trump's hopes of getting a vaccine before voters go to the polls. So somebody in the White House said, this guy's incapacitated. Let's get this through now while he's not looking. Good. Trump voiced his displeasure in a Twitter post late yesterday, Tuesday. New FDA rules make it more difficult for them to speed up vaccines for approval before Election Day. Just another political job. The guy's on roids, okay? He needs to mellow out. The FDA released the guidance laying out more stringent recommendations for drug makers, hoping to apply for an emergency use authorization known as an EUA, for their experimental vaccines. The New York Times reported on Monday that the guidelines had been blocked by the White House. The senior administration official said there had been no holdup of the guidance, which underwent normal regulatory review. The move is the latest effort by U.S. officials to play down politics around the vaccine and assure public safety, but I don't think it's gonna work. All right, let's get to our break, and when we get back from that break, we will go through weather from around the world, and we will finish up with the stories that we have curated for you today. You are listening to West Coast Cookbook and Speakeasy, and we will be right back.
You are listening to netrootsradio.com.
Please hang up and try again.
From a point at sea to the circles of your mind, a new force is at work for planetary transformation. New radio for a new Earth.
This is Take Two Movie Review. I'm Kim Lowe. This week, global girl power. Some of us old enough to remember the original animated feature of Mulan might be a little disappointed with the live-action remake. Sure, it's got breathtakingly beautiful scenery and an impressive cast of actors, including Yi-Fei Liu in the title role, but the humor and tone is lighter than in the original. Director Nikki Caro explained that she eliminated the wisecracking dragon Mushu because she wanted the film to be more realistic, but then confusingly added a new character, played by legendary Chinese actress Gong Li, who is a witch. Still, the new version isn't without its charms. Set in old world China, but borrowing from many different dynasties, it's uncertain as to when exactly the story is supposed to take place. Adapted from a folk tale, Mulan tells the story of a young woman who disguises herself as a man to defend China from invaders. As it's made clear, it's not by choice but at the command of the emperor. Mulan takes up the shield literally to replace her disabled veteran father since the family has no sons. The idea of a woman in a man's role and the trials she faces, even when in disguise, seems even more relevant today than it did over 20 years ago. Mulan has the now popular girl power vibe, but without being heavy-handed. This may well have something to do with the fact that, though directed by a woman, it was written by a team that included both male and female writers. Without spoilers, the part where Mulan rides into the conclusive battle, no longer disguised as a man but as her true self, is truly powerful and will have even the most hardened cynic cheering her on. With top-notch cinematography and direction, Mulan is worth a watch, especially if catching it with young female family members. This has been Take Two Movie Review. I'm Kim Lowe. Catch up with us at TakeTwoMovieReview.com and feed us back on our channel on YouTube.
This is Scientific American's 60-Second Science. I'm Steve Mirsky.
I guess we're sort of in the middle of a major virology education.
Charles Rice of the Rockefeller University in New York City.
I think that, the field has definitely changed, since the days when I was a graduate student. And I think one of the things that is very reassuring now is really the global response to this pandemic in the sort of academic and clinical and, sort of pharma communities. The rate of progress.
Earlier today, October 5th, 2020, Rice was informed that he had won the Nobel Prize in Physiology or Medicine for the discovery of the virus that causes hepatitis C. The identification of the virus has led to tests and treatments for the condition. Rice shared the prize with Harvey Alter of the National Institutes of Health and Michael Houghton of the University of Alberta.
It took us months and months of toil to sequence a single viral genome. Now people can do that in a matter of hours. And the rate at which people have been able to sort of make progress on understanding SARS-CoV-2 and COVID-19 is just spectacular.
Rice spoke this morning on a web press conference from Rockefeller University.
So I think it's taught us a lot of things about science in general. If there's really a pressing problem, we sort of, mobilize people all around the world to sort of work on these problems. Really, great progress can be made. People would love to have a cure in a week or a vaccine in a week. I mean, that's not feasible, but the speed with which good therapeutics and vaccines will be developed for SARS-CoV-2 to prevent COVID-19 is going to be spectacular. And it has a way of, I think, really sort of changing the way that science is done to really make it, sort of more of a community effort rather than something that many years ago might have been pursued by a few labs in isolation. So I think the sort of young virologists today just have this amazing collection of tools and capabilities to understand what's going on in virus biology and the host response at a level that was just never before possible. I'm very optimistic on the sort of future of this, and I do hope that maybe the success with hepatitis C and what I would predict the sort of eventual success in getting a handle on the current coronavirus pandemic that we face will, sort of encourage us to not only recruit more virologists, but also, just sort of encourage people to study these little troublemakers, because you never know when they're going to pop up and cause trouble. So it's worth a small investment.
For Scientific American's 60 Second Science, I'm Steve Mirsky.
Hi, I'm Tom Hartman, and since you're listening to netrootsradio.com, show your progressive side and go to the donate button on the bottom of the homepage. It's progressives like you who power Netroots Radio and keep the progressive message beaming everywhere 24 hours a day. Just go to our donate button at the bottom of netrootsradio.com. Thank you for keeping progressive radio at full power.
Shortly after taking office, Trump puffed himself up in full Trumpian pomposity to proclaim, "We will honor the American people with the truth and nothing else." Well, nothing else unless you count a record-shattering number of more than 20,000 documented lies he's uttered in only 3.5 years. He's now lying that a tsunami of voter fraud is about to hit our land and deny him re-election. Of course, as every investigation has concluded, the only widespread voter fraud in our country is the GOP fraud that voter fraud is rampant. But what's really at work here is that the Donald is in a cold panic about losing, so his only hope is to do two things. First, use the fraud bugaboo as an excuse to restrict voting in precincts that vote for Democrats. And second, delegitimize a Democratic win in advance by creating the myth that his loss could only be caused by hordes of illegal voters. Thus, he and his obsequious political party are actually spending untold millions of dollars in a disgraceful effort to try to keep American voters from casting ballots. Their tactics are worthy of the sleaziest of tin-pot dictators from the banana republics of old. For example, they've simply closed the neighborhood voting places in thousands of Democratic areas, and they've monkeyed with our nation's postal service in a crude effort to restrict mail-in voting. Then, William Barr, Trump's pathetic toady of an attorney general, even tried to boost the trickster's chances by ludicrously suggesting it might not be illegal for his backers to vote twice. This is Jim Hightower saying, so now, after promising he'd tell us nothing but the truth, Trump declared this year that he's entitled to re-election because, unlike so many who came before me, I keep my promises. Obviously, that's his fattest lie yet.
If you'd like more of Jim Hightower's real populism, check out the Hightower Lowdown. Jim's monthly newsletter gives you the real lowdown on which corporations, by name, are doing what to the middle class, our environment, and our democracy. Each month, the Hightower Lowdown brings you facts you didn't know, along with actions you can take to fight back. It also comes with a sense of humor. Hightower believes we can fight the gods and still have fun. Plus, get this, it's cheap. Only $15 brings you 12 issues a year. For real populism, go to hightowerlowdown.org.
The Trump administration versus the census.
I'm Tom Hartman, and this is the Civil Liberties Minute with ACLU attorney Bill Newman.
Article 1, Section 2 of the Constitution requires the country to conduct a census every 10 years. The first census was conducted in 1790 under the direction of Secretary of State Thomas Jefferson and, as required, has occurred every 10 years since then. The census is critically important. It determines how seats in the House of Representatives are apportioned and how $1.5 trillion of federal funds will be distributed. But the Trump administration has attempted to compromise the census twice. First, in an effort to undercount immigrants by discouraging participation, the administration inserted a citizenship question. But the Supreme Court struck that question from the census because the administration could offer no legitimate reason whatsoever for including it. Second, the administration ordered the census to stop dead in its tracks by the end of September, even though the work, on account of COVID, is not done. Fortunately, a federal judge in California has issued a preliminary injunction in a nationwide lawsuit and ordered that the census information collection continue through October. Unfortunately, the Justice Department has announced that it will appeal, even though an inaccurate and under-inclusive census will undermine and plague the country's political system, economy, and civic life for a decade.
The Civil Liberties Minute is made possible by the ACLU because democracy and advocacy begin with you, and freedom can't defend itself.
I'm Rick Smith, and this is Labor History in 2. On this day in labor history, the year was 1945. That was a day known in Hollywood as Black Friday. After World War II, the movie industry began to rake in profits. But they did not pass those profits along to their employees. 10,000 members of the Conference of Studio Unions were on strike. They were part of the Brotherhood of Carpenters and Joiners. They were also in a jurisdictional battle with the International Alliance of Theatrical Stage Employees, or IATSE, over who should represent stage decorators. The strike wore on for half a year. The studios had more than 100 films backlogged and were able to wait out the strikers. But as the strike continued and the studios remained silent, pressure mounted. Despite the tensions between the two unions, thousands of IATSE members refused to cross the picket lines. On Black Friday, the strikers decided to concentrate their efforts at the Warner Brothers Studios gate. 300 picketers gathered to hold the line. Scabs, hired by Warner Brothers, tried to drive through the workers' picket lines to the studio. Variety accounted what happened next, writing, quote, "Strikers deployed from their barricades, halted non-strikers, and rolled 3 automobiles on their sides. By noon, reinforcements arrived from both sides. Firemen were called in to turn their hoses on the striking workers. Warner Brothers Security deployed tear gas. Common for the time, accusations were hurled that the Conference of Studio Union strikers were communists. As a result of the strike, the Conference of Studio Union's employees were assigned to other jobs in the studios. When they refused, they were locked out. The union never recovered. The violence at the Warner Brothers Studios gate also helped to fuel the passage of the Taft-Hartley Act through Congress, which eroded union protections. Like what you hear? Check out more at laborhistoryin2.com.
Thank you for accompanying us here to the chef's table at West Coast Cookbook and Speakeasy Smothered Benedict Wednesdays. We always begin, whether from around the world, along the banks of the Rogue River, in the Rogue River Valley of Southern Oregon on the west coast of the continental United States of America, where it is currently 48 degrees Fahrenheit. It's like fall. In fact, temperatures are forecast to be much cooler than yesterday. We're going to top out about 82 to 84. Oh, much cooler. Some clouds this morning will give way to generally sunny skies in the afternoon. Areas of smoke and haze are possible, reducing visibility at times, as well as your breathing. Winds are light and variable. Tonight's lows will be in the mid to upper 40s, partly cloudy skies, with winds remaining light and variable. Intervals of clouds and sunshine tomorrow with a high near 76. Oh, cooling off because we have a low pressure system, hopefully bringing in precipitous amounts of precipitation. Let's hope and pray. Confirmed coronavirus cases in Jackson County, down here in southern part of Oregon, is now at 1,275 with 6 confirmed deceased. Ragweed pollen is rated high right outside the window here in Rogue River proper. The air quality index is in the unhealthy range for sensitive groups at 113 parts per million. Ouch. And the daytime UV index is moderate at 4, which is a fall level. It is. Barometric pressure is falling at 29.94 inches. Visibility is down to 6 miles, and relative humidity is up to 92%. Weather from around the world is brought to you by people's personal weather stations that they purchased. These people planted these purchased personal weather stations somewhere on their property. And these people positively live around the world. London is 61 and partly cloudy. Paris is 65 and partly cloudy. Rome is 73 and fair. Kyiv is 62 with a light rain. Kabul is 68 and fair. Hong Kong is 74 and partly cloudy. Tokyo is 60 degrees with light rain. Sydney, Australia is 67 and cloudy. San Francisco, California is 54 and cloudy. And New York is 66 degrees Fahrenheit, sunny, with a wind advisory. Hold on to your hats. And that is weather from around the world, brought to you by people's personal weather stations that they purchased. These people planted these purchased personal weather stations somewhere on their property, and these people positively live around the world. Derek Katopoulos of the Associated Press brings us this first amuse-bouche here at the chef's table at West Coast Cookbook and Speakeasy. Greek police officials said yesterday, Tuesday, that they are planning to deploy about 2,000 officers around Athens as the leadership of the extreme rice group Golden Dawn faces a landmark criminal trial verdict. 18 former lawmakers from the party, founded in the 80s as a neo-Nazi organization, are among 69 defendants who have been on trial for the past 5 years, and the verdict is expected for today. And in fact, the leaders have been guilty of running a neo-Nazi crime gang. Golden Dawn had secured 18 MPs in 2012 as Greeks were battled by a financial crisis. The criminal inquiry into the party began with the murder of an anti-fascist musician in 2013. You know, Antifa musician. Some 2,000 police were deployed around Athens Appeals Court as thousands of protesters demanded long jail terms, carrying banners that read, "Fear will not win," and "Nazis in prison." Tear gas was fired into the crowd as some of the protesters clashed with police and threw petrol bombs.
Je te donne c'est mon amour pour la vie entière. La promesse de me trouver à tes genoux. Aussitôt que tu m'appelles, rester toujours fidèle. C'est tout, c'est tout. Je te donne tous mes printemps, mes étés de mer, mes automnes quand les feuilles tombent partout. Si ce n'est pas une bonne affaire, je te donne tous mes hivers.
David Rising and Mike Corder of the Associated Press bring us this final amuse-bouche here at the chef's table at West Coast Cookbook and Speakeasy. The global chemical watchdog group has confirmed Germany and other countries' findings that Russian opposition leader Alexei Navalny was the victim of an attack with a Soviet-era nerve agent, German Chancellor Angela Merkel's spokesman said. Stefan Siebert said in a statement that the Organization for the Prohibition of Chemical Weapons, or OPCW, had carried out its own analysis of samples taken from Navalny, and they agree with the results already from special laboratories in Germany, Sweden, and France. Navalny, a corruption investigator who is Russian President Vladimir Putin's fiercest critic, was flown to Germany 2 days after falling ill on August 20th during a domestic flight in Russia. German officials said last month the lab found traces of a chemical agent from the Novichok family in the Russian politician system. This, once again, confirms unequivocally that Alexei Navalny was the victim of an attack with a chemical nerve agent from the Novichok group. In a statement, OPCW Director General Fernando Arias called the test results a matter of grave concern. Well, that brings us to the end of our broadcast period for the day, but you do know Netroots Radio will broadcast on. It's debate day. Will we have a debate? Ooh, boy. Well, we're going to meet up tomorrow for Metro Shrimp and Grits Thursdays, and we'll talk about it then. So do stay tuned to Netroots Radio all day and all night for all the breaking news as it breaks. And we'll meet up here tomorrow, right here, in West Coast Cookbook and Speakeasy.
Je voudrais du soleil vert, des dentelles et des théières, des photos de bord de mer, dans mon jardin d'hiver. Je voudrais de la lumière, comme en Nouvelle-Angleterre. Je veux changer d'atmosphère, dans mon jardin d'hiver. Robe à fleurs, sous la pluie de novembre, tes mains qui courent, je n'en peux plus de t'attendre. Les années passent, qu'il est loin, là je tombe. Nul ne peut nous entendre. Je voudrais du Fred Astaire, revoir un latte Goël. Je voudrais toujours te plaire dans mon jardin d'hiver. Je veux déjeuner par terre, comme au long de golfe clair. T'embrasser les yeux ouverts dans mon jardin d'hiver. Pluie de novembre, tes mains qui courent, je n'en peux plus de t'attendre. Les années passent, il est loin, là je tombe. Nul ne peut nous entendre. Ba-da-da-dum-di-da-dum. 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 Dans mon jardin d'hiver. Ba-da-da-dum-di-da-dum. 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 Dans mon jardin d'hiver. Dans mon jardin d'hiver. Dans mon jardin d'hiver.